Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
First up, Just Monica. 2017's Doki Doki Literature Club, a fun and free visual novel about writing poetry with cute girls that took the internet by storm.
Following that is 2013's BioShock Infinite, the harrowing journey to Columbia, the city in the clouds, where Booker DeWitt must fulfill a request to bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. I think we have a couple possible themes this week. First of all, huge twists, big spoilers in our Critical 5 for both games, so just keep that in mind if that's something that concerns you. Mm-hmm. But also, girls with crazy powers?
I could see the logic in that.
Yeah. Elizabeth rips through time and space, and then those girls.
Yeah, those girls.
Bewitching looks. Absolutely. Let's talk about the composer headlines. Only one this week when we talk about the slate of composers we've talked about so far, and they're still working. They're still making great games and great things, great music for all these soundtracks. Really, the biggest one this week would be for The Last of Us Part 2. There's a state of play presentation that PlayStation put on and announced a release date of February 21st, 2020. And so, of course, that's more great music coming from Gustavo Santaolalla. And we're looking forward to that, certainly. 2020 is going to be a crazy year. I know we always talk about 2013 and how big of a year that was with, Grand Theft Auto 5 and The Last of Us and the game I'm going to talk about today. But there's also going to be 2020 here, and both of those are like the last year of the console generation. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be crazy because, February is Last of Us Part 2. March is Final Fantasy VII Remake, a game that nobody thought would ever be made, and it's still questionable if it's ever going to come out. I
still don't believe that game's not coming out.
Even for March, though, Watch Dogs Legion is going to be a big one. And then April, Cyberpunk. Goddamn, it's going to be crazy. So, yeah, exciting times for sure. But that's pretty much it this week for headlines.
Yeah, I was trying to find something. I was kind of hoping to find out that Yumiake was doing Watam. He is not.
Same.
It's saving. I saw one site claim that Austin Wintory was doing it, but I can't find a single other source saying that, so I don't consider that to be true. But that would also be the greatest thing ever.
I do look forward to seeing who is doing Watam, though. That should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're just going to start with
talking about my game. It's BioShock Infinite. Certainly a very controversial game, I think, these days, but we kind of have to look back at the time in 2013 when BioShock was an industry-defining game in 2007. And that is really all thanks to the help of writer and director Ken Levine. And Ken Levine is one of those names in the industry where you think auteur. If you're unfamiliar with the term, Hideo Kojima is another auteur. Todd Howard is another auteur. Generally, these kind of larger-than-life figures in the industry, when the work of many kind of gets funneled into the directorial vision of one individual. Like, those are generally the auteurs, and it's generally a film term, but people also apply it to games. And Ken Levine is certainly one of those figures. When BioShock 2 came out in 2010, it wasn't received as well. I'm sure it's still a fine game, but not nearly to the heights of BioShock, in part because Ken Levine wasn't involved in that project. But there was so much anticipation for BioShock Infinite because it was the first game since BioShock that Ken Levine was involved with. So BioShock Infinite released on March 26th, 2013 on Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. It is currently available now on modern consoles with PS4 and Xbox One. Sorry, not Switch. But you can play the game on PS4 and Xbox One through BioShock The Collection, which was a version that had BioShock Remastered, BioShock 2 Remastered, and BioShock Infinite, scaled up for the modern consoles. That was released on September 13th, 2016. BioShock Infinite is developed by Irrational Games and then published by 2K Games. It is a narrative first-person shooter, and it has some role-playing elements where you have different buffs that are attached to equipment that you can choose to equip or not. But it really builds off of the combat gameplay that was found in the original BioShock, where players can either shoot enemies with a variety of weapons, or you can use these elemental-esque powers. They're, plasmids in the original, they're vigors in this game. But yeah, like set enemies on fire. In the original BioShock, you could fire bees at people. It's
Murder of crows. The most important one.
That's another great one. There was like Riptide or something like that, where there's another water, like a water effect. Yeah, so a whole bunch of different effects. But really key to, what BioShock kind of helped really initiate in the industry is the idea of, the storytelling through the world building and how world exploration is really important in these narrative first-person shooters. First of all, you can have, food pickups all around the world that can, recover your health or recover your special power energy, essentially.
Shove those apples directly in your mouth.
Or just all the... There's the Mega 64 video where he's just going through the trash and, eating whatever. It's so fantastic. But you do have a shield that helps you, recover shield. Helps in this game, certainly when it comes to combat. So yeah, you're exploring for a lot of that, different items, ammo pickups, things like that. But it's the audio logs that's the key. These audio log pickups that you can pick up and then play as you're navigating, kind of do both at the same time. It really kind of helps just flesh out the narrative overall in the world and helps with the world building even more. So what is the story of BioShock Infinite? How does it start? Well, it's July 1912, and the former Pinkerton agent named Booker DeWitt is taken to an island lighthouse off of the coast of Maine by twins Robert and Rosalind Lutece. Now, their order is simple to Booker. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. Now, the girl, in this case, is named Elizabeth, and she lives in a place called Columbia. Columbia is a city in the sky that is run by a man named Zachary Comstock. Now, after Booker enters this lighthouse on the island, he is transported to Columbia by rocket. And he discovers that this land of extreme American exceptionalism exists up here. Like it's this big fair going on, and everything's just great on the surface in Columbia. But we realize that, when Booker arrives, he bears a scar on his hand with the letters AD. And here in Columbia, this is the sign of the false prophet that is foretold that this false prophet will steal Elizabeth away and he will corrupt her and this will overthrow Columbia. So the questions kind of going on here are, what makes Elizabeth so special? And can Booker escape this prophecy while also wiping away his debt? Here is where I'll ask you, Joe, what is your experience with BioShock Infinite?
I was very excited for this game. When it came out, I bought it at launch, played it all the way through in 2 nights, and I enjoyed it when I played it. I have been terrified to go back and replay it ever, because I am very afraid of how the narrative holds up. The original BioShock used to be I used to call it among my top 10 games of all time. Wow. I don't think it's there anymore, but it was. So yeah, I have played it. I enjoyed it. I'm scared to go back to it. That about sums it up.
Interesting. This was my first actual hands-on experience with the BioShock franchise. The first game, everyone says how great it is. But the original BioShock is one of those games, like, yes, I have since gone and played it and really enjoyed it. But it is one of those games where it's like, the big twist is one of these spoilers that everybody knows in games. It's like on that Final Fantasy VII level. I think that, like, you just have to know the big twist. So, like, there's nothing too much left to say about that game. I mean, it's a beloved game for a reason. BioShock 2, it's kind of lost in time in a way. But for me, I remember being in Utah on a work trip, and it was in mid-March, and I'm like, people have been talking about this BioShock Infinite game for a while now. I've kind of liked how the trailers look. There's that long demo, and for whatever reason, like, I just decided, like, I'm gonna get this game when it comes out in like a week at that time, for what it was. And I played it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think I even played it again, several months later. Like, I had a really, really good time with that game. It's actually the game that currently has the most hours on my Steam account associated with it, because of the 2 playthroughs, because of the DLC that I bought and played. I find it interesting when people, think it's so controversial and all the talk of, the ludonarrative dissonance and the things like that. But I just find myself really enjoying that game. And going back and looking at footage, it's interesting just to see how graphics have even evolved further still since then. Because, like, some of the face animation, like, it's a distinct art style, certainly. But when you look at things like, the Call of Duty Modern Warfare trailer was played at State of Play, the 2019 game. And it's like, look at how facial animation is right now. Last of Us Part 2, look at how this animation is. And then you go back 6 years to 2013 in BioShock Infinite. It's like, ooh, okay. A little bit of age. A little bit. But, like, it was still really good for the time. So yeah, I have very fond memories with this game. It's probably in my top 25, but I don't know if I'd go and say top 10 or anything like that. I probably would not.
Well, it's the game that proves that our friend Sol is a bigger gamer than all of us, because she beat it with a trackpad.
Wow.
So that's the other thing that I always think of when somebody brings up BioShock Infinite in my presence.
I can see that. I can see why that connection would be made. So the history regarding BioShock Infinite and its development. Development began in February 2008. And that means that a concept was formed 6 months after the original BioShock's release. So yeah, Ken Levine went from BioShock to this. The game project was known as Project Icarus, and they worked on it for 2.5 years before they officially announced the game with a trailer on August 12th, 2010. Now, it wouldn't be until E3 2011 where we'd see a 15-minute gameplay trailer. And it's certainly an interesting point in time, especially for fans of this game, because you go back and watch it and you see a lot of things that they kept, but also a lot of things that changed from that demo. E3 demos today, it's like, oh yeah, they just took that part of the game and that's pretty much how it is. Like, no, there are things that are radically different in this BioShock Infinite demo, because it would take more time further still for this game to be finished. Overall, the development team was around 200 people over this 5-year period of development, because the game was finished. It went gold on February 19th, 2013. So, yeah, 5 years. That's quite a while for the game. The characters of Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth, they're really the emotional hook to this narrative. And I've always found it interesting that Ken Levine brought the actors of Troy Baker and Courtney Draper for Booker and Elizabeth respectively. He brought them into Irrational Games for like an extended period of time to help them flesh out their characters like themselves and what do they think is best for the character? What do they think is right? And kind of help establish some of the story beats that way to really help the character's relationship build naturally. But it's because of this that Levine didn't reveal all the plot details, because he didn't want some of these end decisions or big game shifting moments to really influence the actor method. So I feel like it really pays off because, yeah, the interaction between these two is such a key and pivotal part of this game, and it's really well done, and it pays off super well.
It would kind of be weird if he'd have told them immediately of, hey, here's what it is. Well, pretend you don't know that, please. Thank you.
It certainly would have been. Now, Booker could have easily been a silent protagonist. I mean, many first-person shooter games involve silent protagonists, but
the original BioShock is a silent protagonist.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but when you land a casting like Troy Baker, you want Troy Baker to talk. And I mean, let's just have a sidebar here. What a year of 2013 for Troy Baker. I mean, my goodness. He was Booker DeWitt in BioShock Infinite. He was Joel in The Last of Us. He was the Joker in Batman Arkham Origins. I mean, what a year for the man's career.
Yeah, I think the year before that was the year of Nolan North, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But this was the year that, like, man, Troy Baker sure is in everything, huh?
And it's a good thing. He's a great actor. Booker readily shares his thoughts to anyone who listened to Elizabeth. He communicates with other characters. It really helps flesh out that character. But I think Elizabeth is far more fascinating, though. Elizabeth was apparently inspired by Alex Vance from Half-Life 2, and I can see that. Mm-hmm. She's the emotional driver of the story, and her big ability is that she can open tears into other dimensions. Now, while this becomes a key element of the narrative, it's really important in combat. Elizabeth's AI, she's not something that you have to worry about protecting. Now, she can protect herself. She'll move safely about the battlefield, but she'll find items to throw to you if you're running low on ammo, health, what have you. But she can also open up tears and to bring things like turrets into play. And, these things can like drastically change the battle, just the overall landscape of the battlefield.
God, it would have been so easy to completely ruin this game by having it so that she wasn't invincible, because she can't die. She is not, like you said, she's not like an escort mission throughout the whole game. She's just sort of doing her thing on the battlefield, and they're all aiming at you.
Mm-hmm.
And just, can you imagine this game where you have to like watch her health and protect her? And it would have been awful.
It could have been done, but yeah, it would have been awful. And then 3 months later, Naughty Dog does the exact same right thing, and Ellie is to a T. And that was apparently done really late in development to make her that way. So I wonder if they were inspired by seeing Elizabeth in BioShock Infinite. I do wonder. BioShock Infinite is inspired by different, elements, media, but even real life events. The Occupy movement was a big deal in 2011. And so when you see things like the revolution take place with Daisy Fitzroy, that's certainly inspired by the Occupy movement. When it comes to films that, helped with some of the inspirations, David Lynch's Blue Velvet, and also Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And yeah, I could certainly see those as well. This was a time where PC games were still seeing physical releases.
What a relic.
I know, right? And the physical PC version apparently shipped with 3 DVD discs to support higher resolution graphics than what was available on consoles. Now, certainly games like Final Fantasy 13 on Xbox 360 was also ridiculous. But just I think like, oh yeah, physical PC discs. That's right. That was a thing. But this was really a PC showcase title at the time when they're talking like, the best PC graphics of the year and like, oh, you got to play this on max ultra settings. Like this was a standout at the time for sure. But when it came to console partnerships, Sony and Irrational Games were getting along well. And the PlayStation 3 in particular supported stereoscopic 3D, because, they still had those TVs kind of floating around out there, as well as the PlayStation Move motion controller. Even if you bought the game, it included a free copy of the original BioShock in North America. So, hey, that's interesting.
I remember that.
How did that PlayStation partnership continue? Oh, right, with the announcement of E3 that they're going to make a BioShock game on Vita? We don't talk about BioShock Vita, but that was a thing. So
rest in peace.
BioShock Infinite was reviewed very well, though, with a Metacritic average of 94. It was the third highest rated game of the year. Again, we've talked about 2013 so many times. The fourth highest rated game of the year was Super Mario 3D World. We had an episode on that one. But behind Grand Theft Auto 5, behind The Last of Us, 94 is still an amazing Metacritic score. The story, the setting, the visual art design, and Elizabeth's use as an AI support character were certainly points of praise. The combat was probably the most polarizing element, though. Whether it was the actual feel of the gameplay or that whole ludonarrative dissonant argument. Some people liked it, especially when you had things like the skyhooks and you're having that verticality to it, but then sometimes it felt like padding or repetitive. So I can see that. It's really interesting to note how well BioShock Infinite sold, though. As of May 2015, the game had sold 11 million copies.
Jeez.
Which is a lot. A lot. And that doesn't even include any of the sales that would come from BioShock the Collection starting in 2016. So there are more copies floating around out there. So, yeah, really, really popular game, certainly, and it won a whole bunch of awards, too. Now, granted, Grand Theft Auto 5, Last of Us in particular, took home a bulk of those big top awards that year, but BioShock Infinite still won all sorts of awards, including Game of the Year from 42 publications. I mean, yeah, of all years to compete, that's pretty remarkable. When it came to the soundtrack in particular, it won Best Song for Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and it was nominated for Best Soundtrack at VGX 2013. But when it came to some of the other big award shows, it won Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition at the DICE Awards, and it won Best Original Music at the BAFTAs. BioShock Infinite carries an interesting legacy. First of all, it was another time there were season passes sold with DLC and whatnot. The first DLC that rolled out for this game was Clash in the Clouds, and it was a series of wave-based enemies and challenge maps. Not that interesting, but I think the real star of that season pass was Burial at Sea, which was this 2-part story expansion. Split into 2 parts, the first of which was released November 12th, 2013. So, almost half a year and a couple more months later, and then almost half a year after that, March 25th, 2014. This basically takes place in Rapture. So, going back to that original BioShock environment, takes place slightly before the events of the original BioShock. Involves a lot of the same characters, but Booker is now a private investigator in this version of the world, and Elizabeth is more of like a femme fatale version. Part 1 plays very similarly to BioShock Infinite, just in this new environment with a couple new weapons, but Part 2, you play as Elizabeth, and there's a much more emphasized portion of stealth gameplay.
I never played Burial at Sea. I always wanted to. I don't remember what stopped me.
Oh, man. If you love the first BioShock, you would love this one. The way they tie things together is so clever. As someone who did not play the original BioShock at this point, I got a lot of enjoyment out of what they did with the story. So, highly recommended. And, that all comes together in the collection if this is a game that you're interested in trying out for the first time yourself listening at home. But Irrational Games closed in 2014. and Ken Levine kind of just detached himself from the BioShock franchise. He worked very hard for a very long time on this game. He just needed a break. In February 2017, though, he announced a new studio called Ghost Story Games, and he built this team along with 12 other former Irrational Games members. But there is no announced project yet, so they must still be in pre-pro on something. Then there was a feature from Kotaku in April 2018 where they were reporting about the restructuring of Hangar 13, which is another 2K Games studio. And that's the team that had just finished Mafia 3. Now, employees had apparently stated in this report that they were working on a new project that is codenamed Parkside, and some of those employees said that this is the next BioShock project. However, nothing has been officially announced yet. So put a pin in that when it comes to, listening to this episode a couple years from now, and we'll see if something ever comes of that. So we'll see. Interesting things happening in the 2K space overall. But I think the music of BioShock Infinite is worth recognizing on this show. And that is, in part, thanks to Garry Schyman. Garry Schyman, born in 1954, could not find much information about his early years or how he got inspired into music, but he went to university for composing music. So none of these, the fallback, backup degrees. Oh no, he attended the University of Southern California, USC, graduated with a degree in music composition in 1978. And he started his career through connections, hit the ground running in the TV industry, contributing to shows like Magnum PI and The A-Team as a ghost composer. And man, oh man, talk about some TV programs to kind of get your feet wet with.
Yeah, those are some big names just to start. I've never watched any of those shows and I still know what they are.
They are recognizable classic American TV programs, though. Like the Magnum PI, Tom Selleck, the big mustache, Higgins, his butler. I saw some shows. I saw some episodes of that. A-Team, not so much, but Magnum, yeah.
I've watched Archer. That's basically the same show, as far as I'm aware.
It is kind of basically the same thing. It's a very good, animated, right? How did he get involved in video games, though, in composing for video games? It started at the request of a friend in 1993, and he composed the music for the video game Voyeur, which was a Philips CDI game.
I've heard of that.
It was apparently one of the first games that was scored with a live orchestra for the time. And after he created the music for 2 more games, he left the industry. He said it was not a very exciting place for composers to be at that time. Citing certain things like very low budgets for music composition for games and just the overall poor quality of game music at the time. So he went and he worked on some more TV shows, some films, but then he ended up coming back to the game industry after a quote, orchestral work in TV took a nosedive, according to a Variety article. So it was Destroy All Humans, the THQ game that brought him back in 2005.
That was him?
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of stuff that makes me really happy we did this show.
Destroy All Humans. THQ kind of came to him and they said, we'll give you a budget to use an orchestra for this game. We want this style that's reminiscent of 1950s movies. And so that really interested him. And this was at a time now where the quality of game music had improved. There was a now perceived importance in game music. So it's yeah, all right, I'll give this a shot. And so the career kind of took off from there. And, he's done plenty of more games since then. His music inspirations include Mahler, Prokofiev, and Bartok. He enjoys music from the early to mid 20th century, which you can certainly see in games like the BioShock franchise. So you can certainly see that finding its way into many of his scores. He says that he originally started composing by playing on the piano first, but as the technology has grown, like he now scores all digitally and with the latest technology. But he considers himself to be a very intuitive composer in that he has, quote, something in my mind's ear that I want to achieve. And then he improvises until the music matches up what's kind of in his mind. He finds the hardest part for composing for a project is really finding the basic concept for the music that he wants to use rather than composing any of the individual pieces. And yeah, I get that. Like, you got to get the tone right. You got to get that setting just so. And when you kind of get your sort of instruments all lined up, like, you can create melodies. You can kind of create spin-offs of all of that. And he must do a magnificent job of doing so because he's well regarded amongst fans of his, of being one of the best in the game industry at just nailing the tone for a project. And we'll get through the games he's working on soon, and you'll kind of see that. But today, what is he doing outside of composing for games and films and TV? He's teaching scoring part-time at USC, his alma mater. And he lives in Los Angeles with his wife, son, and 2 cats. At least that's what his biography on his website said. So, the games that Garry Schyman has worked on, certainly the BioShock series, but also the Middle-earth games, the recent ones with Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Those were his. The Destroy All Humans series. I don't think he did the one for Wii, but the other ones, yep, that was him. Dante's Inferno, The Bureau, XCOM Declassified, and his most recent game project was a 2018 VR game called Torn. So, even starting to work on stuff in VR now. I mentioned earlier Magnum PI, the A-Team. He also worked on some music for The Greatest American Hero early in his career for television, but other series didn't really recognize too many of them. Same thing with films. Like, didn't recognize the films he's worked on, but he has worked in those mediums as well. In an interview, he said, how would you describe yourself to people? How would people know you? And he said, well, I worked on the BioShock series of video games, but I also wrote a song called Pran, Praan. And this song ended up being used in the Where the Hell is Matt series of YouTube videos. And if you're not familiar what that is, it's a series of videos like every year from, it started like in 2005, 2006, and could still be going to this day, where this guy named Matt Harding travels to different parts of the world and just dances. And so it's like this compilation video of where he goes all around the world. In the 2008 iteration of Where the Hell is Matt, he used this song Pran by Garry Schyman. And this iteration has 52 million views on YouTube, which I think is the highest, total of views. So that must have been like when that meme, if you want to call it that video, that viral video, when that really caught on, it must have been around that time. So yeah, that was important enough for Garry Schyman to note how some people may know his work is from Where the Hell is Matt.
Also, it's called Where the Hell is Matt? And as two people with a close friend named Matt, that's just really funny to me.
A question you may ask regularly.
All the time.
BioShock Infinite's soundtrack is certainly one that gets its own wealth of information, so I tried to kind of distill it to the most interesting points here. Garry Schyman joined the team rather early. We're working with BioShock Infinite. He said in an interview, quote, "The good thing about that is it gives you lots of time to think about it. The bad thing about that is it gives you lots of time to think about it."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
See, someone is like definitely pushed by the deadline and having that be the impetus for like really cracking down and getting the job done. So it is good to have more time to think about what's going to be what drives this project, but too much time may sometimes be a bad thing. It's just kind of letting you stir. Now, the vision for the music was really truly finalized as the game came together. So kind of in the last 8 to 9 months of development, especially with the last 6 being particularly intense. And it sounded like the very end of development seemed especially hectic for not only BioShock Infinite developing it, finishing it, but for the music as well. As apparently Schyman said that new requests for different cues were coming in even during the last couple weeks that he was working on the game. So talk about trying to hit that gold deadline. Now, Irrational Games, they were based out of Boston, and Garry Schyman based out of LA, totally across the United States from each other. So at Irrational Games, they would capture video of particular gameplay segments and then send it to Schyman. And that would be their kind of means of communicating what was needed, what the timing would be like. You know, maybe take some of the things he had recorded, place them in, see how it sounded, what needed to be tweaked. Makes sense for, 2013, but it's kind of a different way of working compared to some of the workflows we've talked about in the past on this show. I found that certainly interesting. Now, when we talk about Ken Levine as an auteur, certainly very hands-on, and apparently he was more involved with the music in this game compared to the original BioShock. Apparently, Ken approved every note. Ken is not a musician, but he has incredible musical instincts, said Schyman. So you can kind of see that when, during the end credits theme, like he's kind of there with the actors and kind of working them through a song and kind of just being really all hands on deck with this. You'd expect Garry Schyman to work really well with big orchestras. It's kind of what he's drawn to. But the team kind of decided that ensembles were really fitting more for Columbia and this environment for BioShock Infinite. Apparently had like a max number of like 10 players at one time for an ensemble. So like more of a chamber orchestra sort of feel. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Assassin's Creed Syndicate with Austin Wintory, and just like that kind of smaller scale for the sound. You can still get a big wide sound, but it's not the all-encompassing, engrossing orchestra. And obviously a smaller ensemble must have helped for budgeting for the recordings. To say you only have to get so many musicians together, yeah, that would certainly help. Dynamic music was included in the combat, which wasn't necessarily present for the first 2 BioShock games. Not only does a dynamic score in this sense really just add drive to the gameplay, but they use 2 levels of intensity to explore this. There's music when the player's not directly involved in combat, when they're kind of backing away a little bit. And then when you're in the heat of battle, more instruments would be added, just more clashes. There were even little music cues that were included with gameplay moments, such as string stings when you hit a headshot on an enemy, or there's the finishing little when the last enemy of a group is killed to kind of let you know that you're done with this combat section. So, I mean, different dynamic elements like that certainly helped in 2013 as opposed to the original in 2007. Jim Bonney, who is the music director on the game, he's also one of the internal composers at Irrational Games at the time, was brought on to help kind of flesh out the score, kind of take things and fill things out there. And it's interesting that not only does this kind of sound happen throughout the game, but BioShock Infinite uses specific covers of famous pop songs that, we generally all know, but they kind of tweak them to make them sound in this time period of 1912. And these are added throughout the game. It was important for the team that they are not parodies in any way. They have to make sense in the context of the world and just be fun for the player to stumble upon if they catch upon them. There's, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. There's Tainted Love. There's Everybody Wants to Rule the World, among plenty of others. The most famous cover of this, though, and the one I think everyone has to at least pick up on, is the first song that we'll cover in the 5 critical tracks. And it's God Only Knows. To God. 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 To God.
the stars above you.
Naturally, the original God Only Knows, performed by the Beach Boys. But this is a barbershop quartet cover, and this is performed by A Mighty Wind. So players will come across this performance on the streets of Columbia at the beginning of the game. This barbershop quartet comes up through airship on the side of the little island you start on. The player can't miss it.
I remember this very clearly.
Yeah, like it's one of those things like you have to pass by it. It's pretty hard to forget a barbershop quartet like this, especially with a well-known song. It's so well-known, in fact, that they also included this, a longer version, in the end credits. So, like, yeah, if there's one of these covers that makes sense, it's got to be this one. It's got to be God Only Knows on the Critical 5 here.
And I mean, hey, I'm a sucker for like modern songs, more modern songs, I guess. It's not like this was written 10 years ago, but it's more modern songs like put into a different context. Like, what if they were even older? Mm-hmm. I always think that's kind of cool. It's why Postmodern Jukebox does a lot of stuff like that, or did. I don't know if they're still active. But yeah, it's just always cool when that happens. And the fact that it happens so much in this game, I remember thinking that was cool even back in 2013. So
absolutely. So yeah, that one had to be here. As we start to dive into more spoilery things, again, just be warned, we're going to talk some spoilers throughout the next several here. Number 2 on their critical tracks, we got to bring up Lutece. I would say this is probably the most memorable song on the whole score. It's a lick, a riff that pops up when the Lutece twins do. It is their main theme when they're asking things like the bird or the cage, or heads or tails. They are characters you don't easily forget. And it's this little piece that Schyman describes as a tango-ish waltz, rife with humor and tongue-in-cheek in contrast to the violence seen in the game. Yeah, it's just da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba. Like, that alone is just like, oh yeah, that's Lutece twins, it's BioShock Infinite. Like, you gotta remember this one for sure if you played this game.
Oh yeah, and I mostly just remember it from listening to it after the fact. But yeah, no, this is one of those real good songs. It definitely matches their personalities very well. I guess this is the first spoiler we're going to get into. They're both the same person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they're both the same person, but from different universes.
And Rosalind was the original one.
I believe so, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And so she discovered while opening a tear into another universe that she, had Robert there, who was basically in her role. But so yeah, this game is multiverse theory out the ass. Like, it's everything is multiverse theory and all the actions and consequences therein. But yeah, they're fascinating characters. And I don't know how I forgot that Jennifer Hale voiced Rosalind Lutece, but she's fantastic.
I didn't remember that either.
She's so good. Number 3 on the critical tracks. I gotta bring up this one because it's a really important piece. Elizabeth. It's probably the most important track overall to what helped establish the score's sound. Even Schyman says like it was one of the driving pieces that really helped him find the tone for the rest of the score. And he was really inspired by seeing Elizabeth change from what could have been seen on the surface as a minor character to a primary, very important character. There wasn't, on the original sort of design document for this, there wasn't really a plan for a theme for Elizabeth, but he came up with one and presented it to Ken, and Ken loved it. So this is Elizabeth's theme, and it's very much a string quartet, a simpler recording, but it just, when it swells like it does in the clip, especially near the beginning, like it's such a good distillation of what BioShock Infinite's score can be. And so it's haunting, and it just kind of shows the complexity but the whimsy of Elizabeth's character.
I don't know how else to describe it other than, it's very haunting. It's that gorgeous violin part. It's not one of the pieces that I remember the most, personally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is definitely a very good indication of how the score overall just sort of feels, how the tone of the whole thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get into the real stuff with number 4 on the critical tracks, though. Baptism. I mean, this is one of the most important moments in the entire game. It's what got everybody talking. It's what people probably remember the most if they beat this game. Yo, can we talk about that ending, though?
He's her dad!
He's her dad. He is Zachary Comstock. He's Booker DeWitt. No, I'm both. Smother, 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 drown. Like, good God, what an ending. All the different Elizabeths, AD, Anna DeWitt. She lost her finger when they're going through the tear because Booker gave her up as a way to repay his debt, and he's drawn to her because he's trying to save his daughter, but all the jumps through different tears and different realities has caused him to forget. I mean, yeah, I guess some people can have a problem with how multiverse theory gets weird, but oh man, what an impact at the time. But yeah, for them to hit you right at the end that Booker DeWitt is Zachary Comstock, and to prevent Comstock from existing in other universes, they take Booker back to the baptism where he was baptized and became Zachary Comstock. He ran away and became Booker DeWitt. So if you kill him there, you don't have Comstock. Crazy, but the music is so good, and like I'll come across it on different shuffled playlists, and you feel like every vocal beat, at least I do. Just kind of looking back on it. Especially just like the low piano, after the big realization, it's like that's when like the head's going underwater, and the haunting echoey piano as bubbles are going. Such a good piece. I had to put this one.
I don't remember the piece as much as I remember the scene. To be fair, there was a lot happening in that scene. But yeah, no, like just by virtue of where it plays, very important song to talk about when talking about this game's soundtrack.
For sure. And yeah, if you go back and watch that scene, you'll hear this to a T. So good. But we'll wrap things up on a little bit of a nicer note with Will the Circle Be Unbroken?
Will the circle be unbroken by and by, by and by? Is a better home awaiting in the sky, in the sky, in the joyous.
Now, I guess the original song was composed by Ada R. Habershon and Charles H. Gabriel, but this is performed in-game and on the soundtrack and in different versions. I'll take that back. There's a version where it's like a choral at the beginning of Columbia. That's a different singer. But in this context, it's performed with vocals by Courtney Draper, who plays Elizabeth, and Troy Baker, Booker DeWitt, is on guitar. It's most well known from that sort of reprieve in game where, there's a guitar sitting around and Booker picks it up and plays, and Elizabeth's there singing and gives some fruit to a child, and it's just this wistful, happy little moment. It's really memorable. But then you also see Ken Levine, hands-on with these two actors, and there's like a full version of this live performance, like in a studio, just practicing in the end credits, and like with video and all that. So you see them singing. It's great harmonies by Troy Baker. So it's a really important spiritual song in this game. Again, had to be on a Critical 5.
I remember this mostly because it was I remember this for two reasons. One, it's a very, very good song, and there's a part of it that always gets me to tear up that I'll talk about in a second. But the second one being that this was in a trailer. One of the, I think it was, it might have been the launch trailer, but it was a complete 180 from everything that they'd shown before. And it was just this calm trailer that just showed shots of Columbia and like just the verse that you put into the clip. That's the one being sung. It's a very, very good trailer. Probably still one of my favorite little like television trailers for any game ever.
Yeah.
But, there's one part, and it's not in the clip because obviously you chose the part that everybody would know because that's the verse that everybody knows. But the last verse of the song, where all of the guitar just drops out for a second, and it's just Courtney Draper singing.
Oh, and she's so heartbreaking.
She honestly sounds like she is about to break down and cry.
Oh, God, yes.
It is such a strong performance. This song is so good. I absolutely love it. It's definitely one of my favorite vocal pieces from any game, bar none.
It's certainly up there. But we each have 2 tracks on the cutting room floor. So, Joe, let's start with yours.
Well, my first one is a complete change in tone from what we were just talking about because it's The Songbird. I don't know. This song feels like more like what I would expect from BioShock, personally, because this is just an anxious, angry, terrifying song. Because the Songbird is kind of this world's stand-in for. I want to say it's the stand-in for Big Daddies, but it's hard to say that when there is one Songbird and a bunch of Big Daddies. But I think that that's what role the Songbird's supposed to be fitting.
Yeah, it's the protector, so that's the proper parallel to make. It certainly wouldn't be the Iron Patriot, so no.
Mm-hmm. It just kind of sucks that I think people were hoping for a boss fight with the Songbird. I still remember, and as far as I remember, there isn't one. You never have a conflict with it.
I think you may shoot at it in the sky, like while you're on the deck, a little bit, like near the end of the game, but it's not a boss fight by any means. It's like, while it's part of the big wave rush of enemies. So I may be mistaken. It's been a while.
And my second song is not actually a song that was written for the game, but it was, I guess, arranged for the game. Saddle the Pony. Which is, I'm glad you found this, because I actually didn't know exactly what it was outside of knowing that it was like an Irish folk tune. Not really a folk tune, but just a traditional Irish piece or something.
Yeah, like a jig or something.
It is the second half of the track Rory O'More, Saddle the Pony. And apparently the first half was credited as Samuel Lever, but this one specifically, according to your findings, literally credited to Anonymous or Anon.
Yeah, according to the credits on the soundtrack. Yeah, really interesting. I think of Rory O'More, honestly, when it comes to that track, but this is just equally as good. The whole track's fantastic, but yeah, this part in particular, very nice.
I just like fast, Celtic violin pieces. They're super good.
Absolutely. I'm going to go like completely opposite here. We're going to talk about Solace. This plays during loading screens when you're moving to different parts of Colombia. Just this old-timey piano composed by Scott Joplin, which that's interesting. But the record static on this one, like, no, that's not your player going weird or whatever. Like, that's specifically built into this song. And I wish I could have played more, because after where the clip cuts off is da da dun 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 da dun dun. It's just this little happy, fun bit, but I think the kind of plotting melody is what more people remember as they're waiting for the game to load the next area. The other track I'd like to bring up is Doors. And I believe this takes place in the game. Again, spoilers if you've been this far or whatever. You go back to Rapture, which again must have been such a satisfying moment for those that played the game before. I still knew what Rapture was. Again, it's like BioShock's one of those games, like, you kind of gotta have it in your mind of like video games as a culture, right? So I still appreciated the weight and of that moment. And with Songbird drowning in the water and all that. But this definitely recalls the Welcome to Rapture theme that Garry Schyman made famous from the original BioShock. It's a great Rapture recall piece in the main campaign before you go and play in the DLC. What will I never forget about BioShock Infinite? Honestly, it's Elizabeth. Great side character. Just, what a turning point for AI characters there. Just fantastic. Her character arc, what she goes through, her importance in the story. And yeah, that ending like really got people on YouTube at the time. Like, if you remember that at all, you'll surely remember that there were BioShock Infinite ending explained videos everywhere. Everyone had their own take and trying to piece things together, and that was the time in 2013.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Like I said, I haven't replayed it since 2013, and about once a year I think like maybe I should replay it. And then I don't, because like I mentioned above, a little afraid, but I think I'd still probably enjoy it overall. I love multiverse, and I think this game is probably the reason I love the concept of multiverse mixing and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's what I'll never forget is the multiverse stuff. How that lit a fire in me to want to do something with that one day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very tricky, certainly. And if you haven't played BioShock Infinite, highly recommend it. So to transition to the next game, I'd like to talk about a YouTube fan cover, fan remix. And I found Videri String Quartet on YouTube. They seem to be a little ensemble that plays different, samples, tracks, especially from games. They had a medley of Elizabeth and Booker's themes. And I wanted to play the bit that's particularly in the second half from Booker's theme. So please enjoy that. We'll be right back.
So let's talk about my game. Let's talk about Doki Doki Literature Club. Doki Doki Literature Club was originally released for PC on September 22nd, 2017, and it is a free visual novel that can be obtained on both Steam and on the website itch.io. It is developed by Team Salvato, and I absolutely recommend that you go play it before continuing with this episode if you have not played it. It is, again, completely free and can be finished in just probably under 3 hours, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So, just a heads up, you're gonna want to go play it before you listen to the rest of this episode. With that warning in place, let's talk about the game. In Doki Doki Literature Club, or as it is referred to, shorthand, which I will be referring to it from now on, DDLC, you play as a custom-named player character who's kind of just like... He's the player character who's roped into joining his high school's literature club. Now, if you don't know, a big trope in anime, because anime is made in Japan, and a big thing that they do at their high schools in Japan is usually you are required to join a club. That's kind of their way of keeping kids off the streets, I guess, is they require their kids to sign up for some form of extracurricular activity. And so you start the game and you're like, what club am I gonna join? And your friends rope you into the literature club. Said club is made up of 4 girls, one being the player's childhood friend Sayori, the shy but sophisticated Yuri, the childish and quick-to-anger Natsuki, and of course, the popular and peppy club president, Monika. Very early on in the story, Monika comes up with the idea that everybody in the club should write a poem every day, and then they'll all share their poems and so on and so forth, which introduces this really actually interesting mechanic for deciding whose route you're going to be on. If you're not familiar with visual novels, I believe outside of like Ace Attorney, Katawa Shoujo. We talked about Katawa Shoujo.
Yeah.
So you should be kind of familiar if you've been listening, but just as a refresher, basically when I say whose route, in visual novels like this, usually your decisions will lead to you experiencing the version of the story where your character started dating this girl. And it's a completely different story from if he'd started dating this girl or something like that. Instead of like solely basing it on dialogue options, this game actually has a little mini game where you pick words off of a list to quote unquote write a poem. And each word kind of applies to a different one of the girls. And depending on how many points you rack up with that girl while you're going on this minigame, that's who you will spend time with the next day. It's a very, very interesting way of doing it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that really helps it feel a little bit more unique. As the school's cultural festival very quickly approaches, the literature club must prepare their sort of booth, I guess, if you will, their presentation, what they're going to do for the culture festival, so that they can attract more members and build a more lively club environment. And that's the plot of Doki Doki Literature Club. So this is the point in the show where I ask, hey, what are your experiences with Doki Doki Literature Club?
Played the game January 2018, so a few months after it came out. I did not know anything about it going in, but I was told to play it, and I like visual novels, so I played it. I really enjoyed it. I got violently ill after playing it. I had to go to the emergency room after playing it.
All right, I remember this. I remember hearing about this.
And it was not the game's fault. I don't even know what happened. To make a long story short, it's like I was having some frozen yogurt at a chain where you can customize the frozen yogurt. And I have not gone back there since. But it was to the point where like I actually fainted while sitting on the toilet. It was like really, really bad. But yeah, this happened like literally just after I'd finished playing this game. It's the last time I've been in an ER on a stretcher bed hooked up to an IV. So yeah, that's what I'll never forget about this is played it, liked it, puking and everything. Oh God, it was just awful.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I forgot that was right after you played this game.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, I have also played it. I think it might be my favorite game that came out in 2017. I'd have to go like relook up a list.
Persona 5?
Ah, crap. You're right. That was and that was Yakuza 0 too.
Yeah.
And RE7. Oh, that was a good year. So it wasn't my favorite game, but I think it was in the top 5. Easy. Absolutely adored it. Let's talk about why. So, DDLC was mainly developed by Dan Salvato, who we'll get to in a second. To get into the other 2 members of Team Salvato that worked on this game, we'll start with saying that the original designs for the characters were apparently done on a free online anime character creator by Salvato, because he is not an artist and he didn't know how to draw. Confessed. And when he saw these, he used them for test builds, obviously, but kind of came to the conclusion that, like, these aren't going to cut it. And you can actually find pictures of them on the Wikipedia page. I had not seen them. But you can see the prototype little sprites for all 4 girls. They're much different. A lot more, kind of more chibi, but not really. Like this weird in-between.
Okay, so we gotta put it down. On your playthrough, which girl did you favor?
I think I favored Yuri the most.
Same.
Most people seem to gravitate towards Yuri. I like Natsuki. I like her a lot. She's I think Natsuki is the stronger character.
Yes.
It's just Yuri happens to be more of my type.
Yep.
So, sorry, Natsuki. I love you, but you know how it is. The final character art was actually done by a freelance artist who goes by the name Satchel. And apparently they completed the final sprites over the course of a few months. And these sprites were apparently made in parts, like separated parts is how I sort of interpreted how this was worded. So that they could make the poses have a lot more variety than what you would expect from your usual visual novel fare. The background art, though, was provided by artist Laszlo Naserd. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He's based in Ukraine. So...
Wow, that's timely.
Yeah, not really a region of the world where I'm used to the dialect, unfortunately. So I apologize if I said that wrong. But that's what his name is written down as on Twitter. That could be a fake name. That was the only source I could find for that being his name, because everywhere else he goes by the name Valinquent. And apparently they made these backgrounds as fully rendered 3D models and then went and processed them to seem more background-ish. I don't know how else to describe it. You get what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
DLC was developed on the free visual novel engine Ren'Py, which I have used a little bit before. But this game is famous for pushing that engine to its absolute limit. I had no idea it was capable of doing some of the stuff that this game does. And now that I am, I kind of want to use it even more. And the decision to make the game free was apparently, according to a Reddit AMA that I was able to find, that's linked to on the Team Salvato website, he said that their decision to make it free was mainly based on the fact that it being free would draw in an audience who would normally not spend a cent on visual novels, because it's a hard sell to be like, yeah, you know this big thing that everybody's talking about? It costs $10 and it's a genre you don't like. But also he said he felt it'd be wrong to charge for a game that was, quote, not what is being advertised. So that makes sense. I think the fact that it was free was a big part of how it went super, super viral. And obviously he made some money on this game. itch.io has a pay what you want system attached to it. So if you want to give him money, you can. And that's actually where I would recommend you go and pick up the game if you want to. You can get it on Steam, obviously, too. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you go to itch.io and pick it up there, throw him a couple of dollars.
I think he also, correct me if I'm wrong, he sold DLC on Steam with wallpapers, a soundtrack.
Yeah, I believe that came if you gave him $10, I think, $10 or more. So there are perks if you do decide to give him some money, but in the end, overall, just throw him some money. He deserves it. They deserve it. The whole team. Salvato originally, I found this great, wanted to release the game on April 1st, 2017.
Huh.
But the game was not ready by that point. And while he really, really desperately wanted to hit that date, because, it would have been perfect. It would have been so perfect. He didn't want to release a game that he didn't think was ready to go, basically, which is a problem that a lot of games face. And fortunately for him, being an indie developer, he was able to make that call and be like, no, we're going to push it back. We're going to make sure it's ready. A lot of bigger studios don't get that option nowadays. He says that he was mainly inspired to create a visual novel like this based on his love-hate relationship with anime in general, specifically the cute girls doing cute things plot structure that has become very prevalent over the past few years. As somebody that watches a lot of anime, it's become very prevalent over the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite shows from last year was a cute girls doing cute things show. It was very good, but there's an ocean of bad ones out there. He saw this structure as sort of an asset to a player or viewer's enjoyment, but he also saw it as a detriment. It's a double-edged sword is how he worded it, which I kind of think that I agree. And he wanted to use this game to do something new that would, in his own words, cause the visual novel market to become a little more daring with what they were doing. Stop just rehashing the same 3 plots over and over and over and over again. He wanted them to take chances, do stuff different. And I'm really hoping that he succeeds in that. I hope this had the desired effect. I don't actually know, but boy, I hope it did. So each character was given a Japanese name, and this was pretty much specifically to give them this sort of pseudo-Japanese feel. He based it on what a lot of other Western-developed visual novels do. Katao Shoujo is a very good example. Where does that game take place? I don't know. Because all the architecture is American, basically, but all the characters are Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. So it's that kind of thing. And also they were all given their own specific anime archetypes. So like Natsuki is the tsundere.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the shy, quiet Yuri. You have the childhood friend, Sayori. Those are all three archetypes that you see all the time in harem anime and stuff like that. Which, of course, would beg the question, well, like, Monica, she doesn't have a Japanese name. She was specifically given an American name so that she would stand out from the rest of the cast. Which, of course, brings us to the twist.
So
DDLC kind of took the internet by storm upon its release. It reached 1 million downloads within 3 months of being put on the internet. Which that's not 11 million, but that's a lot of downloads. And this was basically entirely because of word of mouth. Like, this game spread like wildfire because people were telling their friends about it, be like, nah, yo, dude, you gotta play this game.
I know the title's weird.
Yeah.
But you gotta play it.
Like, and people go, why would I want to play this weird weeb game? And they'd be like, no, trust me. You gotta play this game. I remember the Game Grumps did a very fun playthrough of this game. It was a fun time to watch. And they talked about at one point where they were going to stop and they went and talked to Ross. And he was like, oh, did you hit the thing yet? They said, what? And then he looked them dead in the eyes and said, keep playing.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I know a lot of people like to give Game Grumps crap, especially as of late. But their playthrough is one of the better Let's Plays of this game. And it's a game you'll want to check out Let's Plays for. But even, I think they're on good terms with Dan Salvato. Like, they're buddies. And so, like, a lot of people point to that playthrough in particular. So I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite playthrough of that game that I've watched. So, it is currently sitting at a 78 on Metacritic, and that is based on only 7 reviews. For a game that went as massively viral as this one, that's kind of surprising, honestly. Many reviewers noted that Act 1 kind of feels like it's a bit long, and like its writing isn't quite up to snuff with Act 2, which is when the good stuff starts to happen. And it just sort of takes its sweet time to get there, which I guess is a valid criticism, I think. A lot of people might stop before they get to the things that the game is known for. Other critics noted that they didn't like how the player character appeared to barely be a character, though to me, that says that they missed the point. That was the point.
It's you. You're the character.
I read in that AMA with Salvato, he specifically points out that we made the player character barely a character, and he just like fills the archetypes you'd usually see in a player character for a visual novel. He's mean to the childhood friend, he's confident to the shy girl, and he pokes fun at the tsundere, and he's not very confident with the popular girl. Like that's it. That's the quadfecta? Sure, let's go with that. And then like in part 2, he stops sort of being a character entirely. So like y'all kind of missed the point on that, huh? But game still did well because it won a variety of awards, including Best PC Game, Best Adventure Game, Best Story, and Most Innovative in IGN's People's Choice Awards. The only one on there I don't really agree with is Best Adventure Game. That seems like a stretch, but it also won the Matthew Crump Innovation Award and also won Trending Game of the Year at South by Southwest in 2018. EGM also ranked it at number 16 on their 25 best games of 2017. And it's kind of stuck to the PC. It hasn't really gone anywhere else. Team Salvato has officially said that they don't really have any plans to release it on like mobile devices or anything like that. I don't think it would work on consoles at all. just due to the nature of it. And the reason that he says they don't want it on mobile phones right now is because they don't feel like they'd be able to deliver a satisfactory experience for those users. They want to be able to give them the best experience possible. They don't want them to lose anything from playing it on a phone. This has apparently not stopped people from unofficially porting the game to mobile devices. So if you've played this game on a phone, they stole that game. That's not an official port. He says that nobody's ever contacted them about doing a mobile port. It's just people just started doing it. So don't play that version. It's stolen and bad. And the music, of course, was also done by Dan Salvato. That's why I said we'd get to him in a bit. He did all of the music for it. And I didn't find a huge amount on him, actually. I did find that he was born on December 23rd, 1991. And according to his Twitter, he is based out of Boise, Idaho. Prior to the release of Doki Doki Literature Club, Salvato was mainly known for work in the Smash Bros. Modding scene, mainly doing hacks and mods for Super Smash Bros. Melee. And in fact, in the game, somewhere, there is a line alluding to Melee. Which, I guess that, according to the DDLC wiki, apparently that line has since been removed. I'm not sure why.
Oh,
It's like Monica mentioning something about Super Smash Brothers, despite the fact that she does not know what Super Smash Brothers is.
I remember that. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I don't know why it was removed, but apparently, according to the wiki, it was removed in version 1.1. He's also kind of famous for having made a couple notable levels in Super Mario Maker, which is how he first interacted with the Game Grumps. But outside of that, I can't really find anything on him. He's very active on Twitter, and he's also currently working on another game, I believe another visual novel, but nothing has actually been formally announced yet. And the closest we've gotten is blog posts of him saying, it's coming, but it's taking way longer than I thought it would. So I'm looking forward to that. After playing this game, he has earned my money immediately upon that game's release.
Yeah. Make it a paid game, earn yourself some money, and sign me the heck up.
Absolutely. 100%. As for his discography, it's this game. This is all he's composed for.
Dude's still a youngin'. He'll do more.
Cause he is, as he says, not really a composer. This soundtrack was actually done by him. He wanted something that was, as he puts it, simple and catchy. And he figured, yeah, I do composing on the side as just a hobby thing. Yeah, why not? Let's do it. And so he did. He does not believe that he would be able to score a bigger, more serious game, because he feels like that would be wildly out of his scope. I don't know if I agree with that, but, if he doesn't feel like he can do it, who am I to tell him he's wrong? But he's wrong.
But, Noriyuki Iwadare last episode said, you're a game composer when you can say confidently that you're a game composer. And
yeah,
maybe he doesn't feel that way just yet, but he's still very talented.
The soundtrack is apparently meant to be calm and serene, with a couple of exceptions that we'll talk about in a bit. And when asked which soundtracks he might have pulled inspiration from, he specifically listed Yoshi's Story, Animal Crossing, and various anime soundtracks. That's not me summing up it's a bunch of anime I've never heard of. No, he literally just says various anime soundtracks. So it's a good thing I found that AMA, because that brought a lot more information than the wiki article or the fan wiki article could have given me. And it's a very fun AMA, actually. I definitely recommend giving it a read if you ever have a chance. But let's get in to them 5 critical tracks, shall we? Because what a ride this is going to be. And we're going to start with the title screen music, Doki Doki Literature Club. This is just your usual cutesy theme. Like, it's exactly what I would expect from the type of game this is. And it's also just a nice, relaxing piece. The girls shouting Doki Doki at the start of that clip. Very nice touch. I love it. And it makes it seem even more cheesy than it already is, which is very...
It's got to hit you with that right first impression, and it certainly does so. It also establishes the main theme, leitmotif, whatever you want to call it. Like it's a riff that gets applied throughout this soundtrack.
Very much
and so it's very important to establish it up front and first.
Yeah, and it feels good to start up, which is a feeling you might want to hold on to for a little bit. Our next song is Dreams of Love and Literature. This is probably my favorite song in the game, I think.
Yeah.
It is so disgustingly catchy. Like, there's not much to it. But it's so fun to listen to. It plays during the minigame that I mentioned earlier, where you pick words to write your poems. It's just a simple song for a minigame that you'll probably be doing for, 3 minutes max? And each word, like I said, corresponds to one of the 3 love interests. It decides who you're going to hang out with the next day. This song is so bouncy and fun and just... I don't know how else to describe it other than it's fun. I love this song.
You could listen to this song like really short. Just you're picking words at random and not giving it much thought. Or you could spend time on each word and give it thought, like, well, if I pick this girl might like it. And the song is fulfilling either way.
Yeah, I absolutely adore this piece. It's only gotten better when I listen to it outside of the game. Fantastic work. Just, so good. Number 3 on the Critical Tracks is Daijobu. Because at least at this point, things are maybe Daijobu. This is, I don't think a lot of people would think of this song when they think of this soundtrack. I struggled between this and one other song that didn't actually end up on my cutting room floor because I couldn't justify removing my 2 cutting room floor songs. It was between this and the song Play With Me, which is probably the more well-known piece. But I personally just really, really like this song. It's this nice acoustic guitar in the background, and it just gives it this nice, relaxing slice of life feel that just feels good to listen to. And sometimes, in a game like this, you gotta go for the scraps on that one.
If it were me, I probably would have put one of your cutting room floor ones here in particular. But this is still a fine song. It's still one you remember from the game. And yeah, to bring in a little more acoustic guitar, it's a good thing to kind of flesh out. There's the piano. There's some of the electric drum synthesizer sound. So yeah, I think this is still a good one.
It kind of sounds like something I could hear in Katawa Shoujo. It sort of has that feel.
I could see that too. Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's another reason why I really cling to it. Which brings us to our next track, which of course brings us to the twist. This is the part where if you don't want spoilers, this is your final warning. Get out. Go play the game. Come back. I'm giving you 5 seconds, and then I'm going to start talking. Cool, that's your time. That probably wasn't 5 seconds. I don't care. At the end of Act 1, the entire game changes. The whole tone, everything about it, completely flipped on its head. Sayori confesses to the player, and they have the option to accept or deny that confession, but it doesn't really matter what they do, because either way, the next day, when they walk into Sayori's room, they will find that she has taken her own life. And then the game breaks. Not like, oh, it just gets weird. And I mean, the game throws an error in universe and crashes. And then when you reload the game, your save file is gone. And also there's something wrong with where Sayori used to be on the title screen, being that she isn't anymore. She has been replaced by this glitched out sequence of pixels and numbers and stuff. It's weird. And when you start a new game, everything seems fine, except for the fact that Sayori has effectively been erased from existence entirely. And at this point, the game kind of shows its true colors. You are not playing a cutesy anime romance game. You are playing a psychological meta horror game. With massive fourth wall breaking elements. And the transition is so good.
So well done. So jarring. And oh my God, like after you feel so bad for Sayori, because before her confession, like she's going through this whole thing of, she's like, yeah, I have really bad depression. And it's not okay. Like I'm not doing well. Yeah, completely heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a real tone changer just right away. Even outside of how, cause that's not an unheard of scene in a visual novel like this, a character opening up to you like that. But the thing that happens afterwards is, so after a while playing the game relatively as normal, the cast starts to act like really, really strange. Like Yuri reveals that the passion for knife collecting that she had shown beforehand is because she has habits of self-harm. And Natsuki starts implying that she comes from an abusive home. And just overall, everything is weird and a lot darker. And then the cause is discovered. See, Monica is self-aware. She understands that she is a character in a video game. And she's in love with the player, not the player character. She's in love with you, the player. And she desperately wants them to pick her and end up with her within the course of the game. It's just one small, tiny issue with that. The only 3 love interests programmed into Doki Doki Literature Club are Sayori, Natsuki, and Yuri. Monica's not on that list. She doesn't have a root. She's not a love interest. She's an NPC. She's a side character. And this kind of drives her insane. This self-awareness also gives her the ability to go in and mess with the game's code. So she uses that to ramp up everybody's negative traits. That's why Sayori commits suicide. She ramps up her depression. That's why Yuri makes a move into yandere, because she ramps up her obsessive nature. She ramps up Natsuki's childishness and her temper. This is all in an attempt to make the player hate those characters, so that the game will have no choice but to let them pick Monica.
I mean, even like the moment where she literally forces the player to pick her.
That part's so good.
Amazing.
Aaron's response of, I'm not doing that, is still one of my favorite responses to that whole thing. Like the genuine fear and shock of like, no, that's not a thing. I'm not moving the mouse right now.
Yeah.
There are various hints that this is the case that become clear once you know what you're looking for. For instance, one of Monica's poems actually refers to the moment she gained self-awareness. She talks about a blinding light and a sudden realization that's terrifying and awful. And that's what she's talking about. She's talking about the moment she realized she's a character in a video game. Or the fact that Monica's character portrait is the only one that is looking directly at the camera. Because she's looking at you. Everybody else is sort of turned to the side, looking slightly down, or looking to the side. None of them are looking directly at you. Monica is staring right into your soul in every single one of her poses. Just small details like that. There's even a point, one of my favorite moments in the entire game, where she shows you her poem for the day, and it is code that is an attempt to like break her out of the game, which causes a fake blue screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. It's so well done. And eventually she does realize the game's not going to give her what she wants. It's not going to let her have her way. So she ramps everything up to the point where Yuri takes her own life and then is like, all right, this is dumb. I'm not going to mess with this anymore. And just deletes Yuri and Natsuki completely. And then it's just you and her sitting in a room staring at each other. And this can be kept going forever. You can close the game at this point, and when you open it, she'll have kept track of how long it's been since you opened the game, and be like, "Oh, it's been a while since you opened it. How are you doing?" And she'll try to talk to you as if she is your stay-at-home girlfriend or something like that.
See, this is actually where I stopped my game. I knew that there was the final step, but this is also the part where I was starting to get really sick. So I eventually went back and saw the full Game Grumps playthrough with that final bit included. But it's like, yeah, if I opened DDLC up right now, yeah, there'd be Monica right there. Mm-hmm. Just Monica.
She'd be ready. And she has a bunch of little conversation topics that she can talk to you. She mentions you by name, or more specifically, she mentions you by the name of the profile that you're playing on your PC, which for most people is their name, their real name, not the one they put into the game.
So clever.
Oh, so good. And the only way to end this act is to go into the game files and delete Monica's character file, at which point she will disappear in a rage, but realize that she still loves you. She still loves the player. And she will say, if this is really what you want, I understand what I did was bad. I get it. I'm sorry. I'm going to put everything back the way it was, but I'll be gone. You won't have to worry about me anymore. And when the game continues, it starts over again. And Sayori reveals that because Monica is gone, now she's the one with self-awareness. And Monica comes back, sort of like the remnants of Monica comes back and says, no, there's no happiness to be found here. The Literature Club is basically cursed. It can't exist. Nobody's going to be happy as long as it's around. And then she deletes the game from your computer. It's this sudden change of tone, this twist that brought the game pretty much all of its attention. It's the reason why when people are like, play Doki Doki Literature Club, I'm not going to tell you a damn thing about it. Just play it. Because personally, I don't think kind of knowing what's coming will ruin a lot of it. Because the game, the sort of feeling that you have from playing the game, the feeling that it leaves deep within your gut, is terrifying whether you know it's coming or not. Mm-hmm. Salvato says that The inspirations for this came from games like Yume Nikki or Eversion, which are two very famous sort of... Yume Nikki I know a lot more about. It's kind of got a lot of Earthbound inspirations, stuff like that. I believe it was also a big part of what inspired Undertale. And he said that he wanted to make a horror game focused on, quote, things that are scary because they make you uncomfortable, not because they shove scary looking things in your face, which, bravo. That's what horror games should be. They need to make you feel, it's more about making you feel scared, not showing you scary things. That's why jump scares are cheap and dumb and nobody actually likes them.
Though if you do like scary things in general, there are a couple here for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. There are a couple of those things. And the other thing that it was notable for is, unlike other visual novels of this type that would usually just add files to the directory as you went, which this game does do. DLC does do this. It adds like little pictures and bonus poems and text files and stuff into the folder as you play. DLC has more of a focus on just straight up deleting files as it goes on. When Monica deletes the game from your computer, it's not for show. It actually deletes the game from your computer. If you want to play it again, you have to straight up reinstall the entire game. It's genius. So DDLC kind of took the internet by storm upon its release. Which brings us to our next track. Just Monica. So this isn't so much a song as it is a soundscape. An extremely unsettling, creepy soundscape. And to me, what I like about it, and the reason why it's on this Critical 5, is it sounds like Monica has seemingly broken the game so hard that you can hear it trying to run the game it's supposed to be running, and it straight up can't. Mm-hmm. Like, you can hear little clips of other songs from the soundtrack try to play, and it's just, oh, it's so good. It's got this fantastic, creepy atmosphere. I just want to drink it up. Oh, put it right in me, right in my veins. So good.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. And you're absolutely right. It's definitely more of a soundscape. But yeah, this is when she's just staring into your eyes and the world could burn around you. And it's just playing this. It's fantastic.
Wonderful, wonderful part of the game. But everything eventually needs to come to an end. And they do with our fifth track, Your Reality.
Every day I imagine a future where I can be with you. In my hand is a pen that will write a poem of me and you. The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right the way into his heart. But in this world of infinite choices...
This is the credits song. It is an extremely bittersweet piece, in-universe implied to be written by Monica about you. Earlier in the game, she implies that she has been trying to learn piano, and she's trying to write a song, and she wants to show you at some point. And I choose to believe that this is the song she was trying to learn. It is a beautiful piece. I love it dearly. It's probably among my favorite songs in 2017 for sure. Probably number 2 to like Life Will Change.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm ranking it above Judgment, everybody. That's a lot to say. It was apparently a very early decision to have Monica sing the credits song, mostly because Salvato kind of thought about how other games with lyrical credits had really impacted him in the past. He specifically mentions Portal as a example of that. The vocals were provided by Jillian Ashcraft, who Salvato apparently picked specifically because she sounded a lot like how he pictured Monica sounding in his head, and he knew that a worry would be that people would hear it and go, that's not what Monica sounds like. That's not what I was picturing. But he knew that this was something he had to do because he felt like it was the right decision to make.
Yeah, he nailed it. She nailed it. It's, of course, especially effective because it's using this melody that you've heard throughout the game, but then applying lyrics that fit with the theme and the character motivations. So yeah, terrific ending theme.
It's absolutely, absolutely amazing. So, for Cutting Room Floor, you got one? Hit me.
I do have one. I'm going to talk about My Confession. So because we both picked the Yuri route, this one means especially a significant memory for us, because this plays when the girls are confessing their feelings to you, and it's a really nice piano piece, and it is really fitting for a dating simulator. But then something bad's about to happen. Like, you just know with this game, something bad is always around the corner.
Always.
And man, for Yuri, that messed me up badly.
Yeah.
Again, when we talk about great Game Grumps moments, I mean, that's another one where it's like, yep, that's one of the best moments of that playthrough.
So, question about that specific moment. Did you think your game was broken?
Yep.
I did.
Yep. Took way too long. It's like, if there's any criticism, like a little much for skipping all the text. Yeah.
A little bit much. For me, I have Okay, Everyone.
This is probably the one I would have put in the critical 5 if it were me.
This was probably a close 6, I think. 100%. If it were a critical 6, this absolutely would have been on the list. This piece apparently has 5 variations to it within the game, one for each of the girls. Monica's emphasizes piano, Yuri's emphasizes pizzicato and harps, Natsuki's emphasizes a xylophone and recorder, and Sayori's emphasizes a ukulele.
That's neat. I didn't know that.
I also did not know that, but it makes perfect sense.
And, it's definitely a song that plays in a lot of the daily life action at school. So, yeah, you'll hear this one a lot. And it makes sense that, for the different girls you're spending time with, it's got to be different somehow.
Mm-hmm. And I believe this is also the song that specifically plays when you're reading their poems. And that would be where the variations come in, I think.
Yeah.
And my other song is Sayonara. Game is breaking. It doesn't know how to handle this. Error. I love this song specifically because of the way it sounds to me feels like the game does not understand what's happening. It does not have a song that is meant for a scene like this. I put one of the songs in a minor key, make it sound kind of sad. What do we do?
Make things out of tune and pitches are warping and falling apart.
And it sounds broken, which is fitting for the exact moment the game breaks completely. This is the moment where you find Sayori in her room, having taken her own life. Very, very poignant scene, and this song just drives it home.
I think, and I'm going to heap a whole lot of praise on Dan Salvato here, not to get morbid or anything, but I think this is the perfect encapsulation of like your mental state of finding out a loved one has died. Like it hits you with the wallop at first, and your mind is a flood of things falling apart. It's just, the pitches, everything just like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And after a certain while, it's just like, there's nothing. It's just like, I'm my brain's just shut down for a while, and maybe there's a little bit of trying to function still playing. It's like, I think it's incredibly well done, not just for the moment, but you could put this with like any awful tragic news that you learn or whatever. Death, it could be whatever, but he nailed that mental sensation perfectly, and holy wow.
100% agree. Absolutely. This whole game nails almost everything it's trying to go for, in my opinion. It's fantastic. Which serves as a perfect segue into what will I never forget about this game. I don't like to curse on this show. I like this show being like an everybody can listen to it sort of thing, but I don't have another way to put this. This game fucked me up. It is so adept at making you unsettled, at making you uncomfortable, that after playing it, I was jumpy for like 2 days. And then I just honestly couldn't stop thinking about it for days after that. Anybody that has any interest in a game that sort of like subverts its chosen genre or does like a meta narrative, I think needs to play this game. It is fantastic. It is, again, completely free. It is a masterful production. And yeah, if you somehow made it all the way here and you haven't played it yet, what are you waiting for? It's free.
It is masterful. And, at the top, before we got into all the spoilers and whatnot, it's like, no, I seriously got very sick. And it was, in retrospect, it's amusing because, like, yeah, I probably got sick off something from what I ate, or it was just a nasty bug disease going around at the time or whatever. But you couldn't make the case that it's like Monica messed me up bad.
You were getting ready to delete her, and she had to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, so you could make the case, and yet, like, yeah, I see it. That works. So I'll remember for that sickness. But the moments, the twists, and there, yeah, oh man, yeah, it's a game that will not leave your memory anytime soon.
It sticks with you real hard.
So yeah, now it makes a little more sense when it's, girls with crazy powers or, huge twists. So a fitting set of themes there for this week's 2 games. Just long episode, but a fun episode. Like, had to talk about these games eventually, and it's just good to put them at the right time here.
And it starts my whole theme of the month. I'm doing spooky games all month.
Spooky.
I'm looking forward to it, everybody. I love Hawktober and I love horror games, so strap on in.
Indeed. So that will do it for this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at the Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com, but it's that MP3 podcast version you want. Find the show at anondino.squarespace.com for Anonymous Dinosaur, but it's podcast services around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcasts, search Original Soundchat there. You download it, you take the shows with you on a run, in your car, at work, and we won't tell your boss that you're listening to conversations about great video game soundtracks. You can also check out our Spotify playlist. What's on the Spotify playlist from this week?
Surprisingly, BioShock Infinite is not. I thought it was, but none of Garry Schyman's stuff appears to be on Spotify. But Doki Doki Literature Club is.
Doki Doki.
Alrighty.
Excellent. And then you can reach us on social media at Soundchat OST to talk about, how we're doing with these episodes, what you'd like to hear us talk about, games you want to cover, all that good stuff. And then check out our bonus tracks. Should have another interview coming in the next week or two. So that should be fun. And then we'll see when we can best roll out our other bonus track show that we have in mind, or at least when we can properly tell you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I am talking about Vincent Diamante.
I will be talking about Manami Matsumae. So yeah, some good games to talk about there for sure.
So let's go ahead and get this ending on the road. As we've said a million times, we like to take a fan cover or a remix or something from YouTube or OC Remix and sort of give it a shout out to serve as our transition or our ending. And I actually found a really good cover.
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.
When I can't even read my own feelings, what good are words when a smile says it all? And if this world won't write me an ending, what will it take just for me to have it all?